What if I told you that you could have the most realistic track work on the planet without hand laying or expensive jigs? Introducing the Roadmaster series from Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supply. Straight track, curved track, diamonds and turnouts that are easy to assemble and provide all the detail of real track. And coming soon, curvable turnouts. Learn more on their website, ohrtracksupply.com. Attention proto throttle users. If you've ever wanted to have your throttle fit more comfortably in your hand and change the batteries without removing the throttle's case, now you can. Introducing the Narrow Throttle, a new product developed by Scott Thornton that reduces the size of the proto throttle by over 25%. Log on to narrowthrottle.square.site to learn more. That's narrowthrottle.square.site. Enjoy more comfort and never have to open the case again. Trains aren't just a hobby, they're a way of life. At 1810 Designs, they create handcrafted wood art that captures the spirit of the rails. Whether you're a modeler, a collector, or just love the sound of a distant whistle, 1810 Designs is here to enhance the hobby. Visit 1810designs.com and bring the railroad home. That's 18tendesigns.com. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com.
ATLP Rewind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. It's time once again for Talking Ops with Don Irace. And joining me to do that, of course, is Don Irace. Don, welcome back.
Ray, glad to be here. And I'm in-house too tonight.
In-house at the ATLP Studio here in Plainfield, Connecticut. So glad to have you here and up north. And hopefully we're going to get to do some ops while you're up here. Looking forward to a visit over to Mark Herrick's BNSF Montana division.
Yep.
And while you've been up here, you've also been keeping yourself busy with a little bit of remote dispatching too, right?
Yeah, I've been working with John Farrington to get his layout running up with a remote dispatching. So we did one last Wednesday. It went well, but you need to tweak some stuff because it's always a work in progress with that stuff. But we played with it a couple of days. We finally got it all working. We had to change the server because Skype's going away May 5th. So now we're using TeamViewer, and then we finally, with Mark Herrick too, me and Mark finally figured out how to get the audio to work on the TeamViewer, and we just applied all that to John Farrington's layout the other night, and it works well, So it's getting there. It still needs a little bit more work, but it worked out really well.
No, that's great. And yeah, as soon as things start to work well, they seem to take things away. And Skype was something that you had been using for quite a while, but good you were able to figure it out and get TeamViewer to adapt to that.
Yeah, it was when we first started doing this remote dispatching like 15, 18 years ago, we used Yahoo Messenger.
Oh, wow.
People must remember that,
Yeah.
right? Then that went away. And then we moved over to Skype, and then VNC went away. The free part of VNC went away, so we ended up moving over to TeamViewer. The lucky thing is that there's something out there for free that you can use to make up, I'm sure eventually TeamViewer will fade into the sunset, and we'll have to be looking around for something else. But I also found you can do some audio on Discord has audio, but we haven't tried it yet, and WhatsApp also has audio that you might be able to use too. We didn't try either one of them, but I was looking around trying to find something as a backup, so we always have a backup, But
yeah,
hopefully TeamViewer will be around for a while.
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely helps. And we're going to have to do at some point another show about remote ops. There's just a whole bunch to that is really amazing. Not overly difficult, but there's certainly some steps to be done and certainly some really cool advantages to remote ops. So we're going to have to do something to kind of show the folks how that all works.
Absolutely. I've been getting actually, after I did John's last week on the Facebook page, people were right away. We need to do an article on remote dispatching. Well, I'm not much of a writer, but I can talk.
Yeah.
So we'll talk one through. Maybe John was talking the other night about maybe doing a YouTube video on his channel for it too. So we'll see what happens. But I won't be doing anything down there till I get back home. So
Yeah, well, definitely something to talk about, and we'll look at that towards the future. But tonight we're going to be talking about bulletproof operations. And this all stems from my time down at your layout and operating it. And boy, I just was amazed at just how well your layout ran. I operated that PR3 job. I never touched the locomotives once. No issues, no problems. It just ran like a Swiss watch. And I said, boy, it inspired me to come home and say, what the heck is wrong with my layout, and trying to get it towards that way. So excited to talk to you tonight about kind of the checklist that you've put together of how do you bulletproof your ops? How do you make it as trouble-free as possible to make a better operating session and have your layout run the way you want it to? Because that preparation, and I joked in the past that it seems like carbon dioxide seems to affect layouts, right? The more when people start showing up is when problems seemingly start to creep up.
Exactly.
So how do you get ahead of that, and some of the things that you can do to avoid maybe that edge of embarrassment and the troubles during an operating session?
But I've learned of all the years. I mean, I've been operating for over 20 years, and I probably have in excess of 800, 900 ops sessions under my belt between our regular ops group and special functions, NMRA, national, regional stuff, the spring tours that the little roadie put on. But it's I don't know, it's a work in progress for me. You know, every day it's something that you got to do to make things run better. Things happen. Gremlins are the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have a flawless operation going, and as soon as somebody walks through the door, it falls apart. I mean, I used to upset me in the beginning, but it doesn't upset me anymore because it happens. You can't help it. You got climate control, power. There could be any issue that will cause something not to do what it's supposed to do or behave itself.
Right.
And you just work through it. You know what I mean? It is what it is. You know what I mean? But I go to guys operating sessions and something happens. And it's like all of a sudden the sweat starts rolling off their foreheads. I'm like, what's the matter? Oh, no, something's wrong. I mean, don't worry about it. I says, we'll get through it. And then we'll figure out what it is. We'll fix it for the next time.
Right.
There's no sense of worrying about it. It's supposed to be having fun here.
Yeah. It's about keeping the right mindset, but it's also, trying to make it as good as possible with continuous improvement.
Exactly.
And we're gonna walk through that. Let's get right into it. I think this all starts kind of with right from the beginning, that proper planning before you even really start your layout.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got to have a plan. I mean, I'm not going to say my first layout, I probably winged it when I first started, but on the second layout, I had a plan. I had a list of what not to do again.
Right.
And I mean, it's
that book we've talked about before. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
You know, and when you build your layout, always write down the things about the layout you have now that you wish you didn't do, and another list of wishes stuff you did do, and then on the next layout, use that list and those notes to improve the layout. My first layout was big. It was huge. It was 15 operators. I kind of might have overdid the industries a little bit, you know what I mean? But this is one of the things I put down on a list. You don't need a ton of industries. I went from God knows how many industries I had in that layout. This layout's only 12 by 10, 20 by 12. And I got 12 industries on the whole layout.
Right.
Big difference, Yeah. Less industries, less cars. I got 4 operators, less locomotives. I miss my big layout, and I miss all the guys that we had at that layout every week, but I'm much happier with the smaller layout now because it's less maintenance, less expense. I keep 4 or 5 guys happy there. We still have the remote ops, and everything's good. But I mean, when you build a layout, I can't say this enough, your bench work and your track work is the foundation for your layout. If you don't do that part right, you're going to be sorry. And that's going to go on the list of things not to do again.
Yeah.
Because you got to have it. I mean, I've gone to layouts where you're spotting a car, you drop it off, you pull the engine away, and the car's following you right out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to use a level. Mm-hmm. Anywhere where you're spotting cars, especially today with these new cars, they roll so nice. You're not like the old Atom Blue Box where you could push them and it would go an inch and stop. Especially new tank cars today, they'll just roll right away on you.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So anyway, you're spotting any cars up, you need to make sure your track is pretty much level there so the car will stay put where where you want it. The other thing is your track work. I can't stress that enough. Make sure your joints are flat, level, so the wheels don't jump up on the rail. If you got one rail just a little bit higher than the other, you'll notice it. And if you come back a little too fast, on some cars, the wheel will pop right off the rail and on the ground it goes. So jeweler's files are handy for filing that down so nice and flat and even. Turnout points, another big thing. What I do on mine is I have a small jeweler's file and I sharpen the ends of the points, the switches, so you'll cut yourself if you're like a knife.
Yeah. But
But when they rest up against the stock rail, they're like they made as one,
Right.
and you don't have the car jumping, derailing. Any place where a wheel is going to pick a switch and pop off. I've operated some layers where you're going there week after week and it's the same problems. And you say something,
Yeah.
and you go back but that falls into the maintenance.
Right.
If you don't tell me what's wrong with it, I can't fix it. So it's
Yeah.
always going to be there. But track work is important. You got to have it right. A lot of people do a lot of different things with track. If you got long sweeping curves, some people super elevate their track. And that's nice looking. And it's good for long trains. It looks pretty going through, but you got to make sure that joints are right. If the joints ain't good, and like I solder my helix, for instance, I solder the 3-foot sections together straight.
Yeah.
And then I put it on the helix and mount the track down. So the joints never buckle at the, the rail joints will buckle if you put it too much strain
Yeah.
on them. You know what I mean? So the soldering stops that. It makes it like a welded rail, basically.
Sure.
And this, so as far as track where it goes, there's turnouts, the points, your joints, make sure the track is level with the car spots, and you shouldn't have any problems at all with that stuff.
Yeah. What are some of the things to really, when you start talking about track work, talking about maintaining and making sure that all those joints come together and that they're clean, it really seems to be a slow down and really take your time when it comes to laying track.
Yeah, you should never be in a hurry to lay your track. I mean, if you're going to do little 9-inch sections, those little section tracks, you'll be there forever because you got a lot of joints. I firmly believe in using the 3-foot sections. Less joints, better operations.
Right.
You know what I mean? But as you put the track together, just run your hand on it. I had that, and I had a truck with metal wheels on it. And when I was done putting the track together and it was nice and clean and smooth, then I would just put the truck on and just run it. I just push on my fingers, just let it run.
Yeah.
And just wash the truck and see if it jumps when it gets to the joints. If it doesn't jump or if it doesn't try to wiggle, then you got a nice joint there, But it takes time. But as you're laying the track, pay attention to your joints as you're doing everything, If you get a bad switch and you can buy a bad turnout, that happens. It's had happened to me. Put it in, you get it all done, and then, I don't ballast nothing until the track is the way it's supposed to be. Then you just take the switch out, put a new switch in before you start doing the ballasting and stuff. So,
right.
Always a firm believer. Don't do any scenery until you get a couple of op sessions. I say probably half a dozen op sessions under your belt to make sure that it's going to work the way you want it to work. The railroad's going to flow the way you want it, because once you put the ballast down, it's not too late, but it's a lot easier to fix track and turnouts and stuff like that before you ballast. The other thing with turnouts is wiring. Some people think you just put the 2 wires on the 2 outside rails and the switch is good to go. False. I wire any part of that turnout that has a solid rail, stock rail, gets a wire.
Yeah.
It gets a wire on each side. It gets a wire on each end where the switch points are. On one side of frog, on both sides of frog, this thing gets wire because I use insulated frog turnouts. So I just make sure, even if I don't use all the drops, they're under the layout.
Yeah.
So if there's a problem, all I have to do is say, okay, here's the wire, put it on the bus, problem solved. It takes time to put wire and all that stuff, but it's definitely worth the effort to me.
Yeah, I'm starting to find that in my turnouts, and there's two things that I really don't trust to carry power. One is the points, and one is rail joiners. I just don't trust them.
And you shouldn't.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. So, but the trouble is that commercial turnouts, most of them have some kind of joint where the switch points are, the swivel. You know, whether the old Atlas ones had the rivet, the big rivet. Well, they don't have them anymore. They've definitely cleaned them up a lot. Unless you do like fast tracks or one or the other, you know, so if you build your own turnouts, then you don't have that because the point rail is joined right in with the stock rail.
Sure.
But when you're using commercial turnouts, those are two more bad spots where the switch points come into the rail. That's because once you put paint on there, you can kiss that joint goodbye because that paint will work its way into that joint and insulate it. And then you got a whole section, you got a whole switch point the switch point, the points. Right? So yeah, so once you're all fine until you put paint on it. If you don't paint your rail, then it really won't be an issue until oxidation pops in because oxidation will get it in there anyway. You can't clean in there. It's impossible. So, but once you paint it, that wet paint will flow into that little joint and it'll insulate it right off. So if you just solder a wire right on the point side of that joint, there's not a lot of movement in the rail there. So you're not going to have a problem with that. You know what I mean? So that's what I do. I wire a lot of drops out of my turnouts. So I make sure that I don't have any, and I go around with a meter and I check everything all the way across everywhere to make sure that switch is picking up power everywhere. I don't like juices. I won't use them because to me, it's kind of a waste. It's a lot of money. It's cheaper to put a couple of wire drops on there and we'll beat a juicer any day. And again, I solder all my points where my turnouts are. I leave unsoldered joints every so often. I use a regular book of matches, the cardboard book of matches, and I'll pick a spot and I'll put that cardboard in there when I put the track together and I'll move on. This way here, and I'll leave those gaps unsoldered. And there's my expansion contraction point. You don't have to expand have joints free everywhere. You don't need it. If you don't have a climate control basement, if it's really humid in the summer and hot, you might have a problem anyway because even if it's soldered, or no matter what you do, you're not going to get around that because I've seen track pop up, look like, twist.
Yeah.
And a ballast is only going to hold as good as glue you use to hold the ballast down.
Right.
If you use a lot of glue, that'll help save it. But once the rail's only going to take so much pressure, and then eventually when it gets humid and everything starts to expand, it's gonna Yashi blows at some point. Whether it's a turnout or in the middle of a track run or whatever. So I like to leave some expansion in some of the rail, like even if you do it like every 12 feet or something like that. Or if you have a big run, put a couple of expansions in that long run, but solder your joints at your turnouts. This way here, you never have to worry about relying on a switch point to get power through your track.
We talked a bit about putting drops and turnouts. Let's talk about drops on track. How many drops should you see on your track?
In between every rail joiner, you should have a drop. Do not depend on the rail joiners to feed power on your railroad because you'll have big trouble. It doesn't take long. I buy data. Well, I did buy Cat 5 cable, 1,000 feet. You buy a whole box of it. I mean, I probably got 2,000 feet of data cable running in my shed for turnouts, controls, whatever. I love this stuff. It's good for drops. You run your 14 stranded bus lines, and then you get the Cat 5 cable and you peel it. You got 4 pairs, 4 different colors. You got a solid and the color and a white, and you just strip that and you bend it, and it's small enough that you solder it to the side of your rail, and it kind of disappears. Once you paint it and everything, you kind of don't even notice it anymore. You don't need big gauge wire drops. If you wire your railroad right and you put your drops between each joiner, I mean, if you're going to use 9-inch sections, then you're either going to solder the rail or you're going to put more drops in. You know what I mean? Yep. Like I said, I save my long runs to put my expansions in. But I still I still put a drop between every rail joint. I don't have anything on my layout that there's no wire between the rail joiners.
Now let's talk about hooking up that wire. And this is where you and I have a little debate because I like to cheat, but I'm going to defer to you being more of the expert. Let's talk about hooking up those drops to the bus line.
All right. Well, all depends what you're going to do. If you're just going to have a standard railroad, no block detection, none of that stuff, then on your bus wires, there's a lot of debate out there on how far away the bus wires should be, or some people say they should be twisted. Well, I guess twisting's fine if that's what you want to do, but to solder a drop onto that is a pain because you got to pull it apart now. Now you twisted it. Now you got to pull the twist apart, which is tightening up the rest of the twist, strip it, then solder the wires on, but everything's together. I've never done that. My bus wires, 12 inches apart, separately, running parallel with the bench work, obviously. And my drops just come down. Of course, I use detection, so I have to plan out where my where my detection points are going to be. Mm-hmm. And all the wires coming off that rail, any wire feeding that rail in that block has to go through the detector before it goes onto the bus. Because if you miss one, your detector's not going to work because the detector works on current.
Yep.
And if there's one wire you missed that goes from the track directly to the bus, that one wire will wipe out your detection. Just that one wire. If you can have 6 wires and you only put 5 to the detector and one didn't, you're going to have trouble. Basically, you just make sure when you're wiring the layout, make a choice. The front rail closest to the fascia is the solid color, and the behind rail is the color with the white. And follow that all the way through, because especially if you're going to put all your drops in and then go back and wire to the bus after, now you know which side is which.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're not going to get them mixed up. Don't use the same color wire. I see that all the time. That guy went out and bought 250 feet of red stranded wire.
Yeah.
His 2 bus lines are both red, and all the wire coming off the drops are all red. You got to have at least 2 different colors. Black and red is my choice. And then again, with the Cat 5 cable, you got a solid color, and you got the white with that matching color. And it helps you organize your wiring too. But like I said, if you're doing detection, it's a little more of a bear. You really got to pay more attention to what you're doing. I probably have I'm using 3 AIUs with 14 channels on each one. So I have a lot of detection. Two of my AIUs are just for detection, and then the other ones are for the switch feedback for cats. So the computer knows what position the switch is actually in. It's just not taking a guess. But if you get into that, then you'd know what I meant. But for basic stuff, just use 2 different colors on your track bus wire and don't use one color,
Absolutely. And I'll share my comedy of errors, which is my layout and the mistakes I made. And this is what happens. Giving out advice is so important to make sure you give good advice, because it can mess up a whole bunch of folks. And
sure can.
I'll take, full responsibility for what I did to my layout, but I took my bus wire and I thought you had to have it twisted, but I stuck it in the end of my cordless drill, and I've got that thing spun so tight. And now I'm kicking myself, because although it may not have been as tight as it is now, as I started to pull apart to solder on, or actually this case, suitcase connector, my drops, which you're going to smack me here in the studio for. But as I do that, now it's tightening and tightening and tightening. Now I'm going back and I'm seeing, I missed a drop here. I missed a drop there. I want to add some more drops to make sure I got power through turnouts. And now I'm trying to, I've got nowhere to go. In fact, it's to a point where I either got to disconnect all my bus wires or all my drops, and then I've got to go back and either run a new bus line or something. It's just causing all this rework that if I would have just planned ahead of time, I wouldn't be back laying upside down under my layout trying to figure out this wiring yet again.
Yeah, I know. You're right. I mean, I don't know where this, it comes down to this signaling cross talking is what they're referring to, why you twist the wires. when I was working, we did traffic signals. I did traffic signal work for a living, and we used to do the detectors in the road. They're like 6 by 20 or something like that. They're all different sizes. And you would have to run a single wire around this saw cut in the road.
Yeah.
But when you brought the 2 wires together to go back to the controller that got tied on the loop detector, you had to twist them.
Yeah.
All right. So we'd do the same thing. We wouldn't twist them with a drill, but we just hold them and just keep twisting it to try to get down to about 4 or 5 twists per foot.
Yeah.
That eliminated this cross-talking that would happen if you just ran the wire straight. So basically by them twisting, it crosses that signal out so you don't get that noise in this road from the cars. On the layout, I don't know, my old layout, I ran parallel wires. I never had a problem with cross-talking. I never had to use snubbers on the end of my cab bus.
Yeah.
I never had a problem. I don't know what causes that on a model railroad, what causes all that interference to happen. I've had radio interference with the DCC systems. You keep the radios away from the DCC system, the 2-way radios that we use.
Sure.
But that's really the only interference I've ever had. But some people will say, yeah, you got to twist it. I've been around for a long time, and I've had a couple of good sized layouts, and I've never twisted the wires. So just keep them spaced apart. Don't run them 4 inches away from each other. I got 12 inches is a good space,
So either keep them spaced out fair well apart, or if you're absolutely adamant about twisting them, only a few. Keep it very minimal, because you definitely don't want to be in the position that I'm in, which is now debating what wires do I cut and what do I rerun and all this rework stuff. So
yeah. I would suggest if you're going to twist them together, 3 to 4 turns per foot is probably about all you're going to need. Even 3 turns is plenty. I think 4 is still a little too much. I think 1 is too much, but it's...
So put the cordless drill away for that job. Okay.
Do it by hand. It's a lot easier, but it's a pain to strip the wire and put your drops on it when it's twisted like that. To me, it's just a pain.
All right, let's get into some of the fun stuff, the rolling stock and locomotives and some prep that you do for those.
Rolling stock is a big one. I can't even, fathom the amount of layouts that I've operated on where I've gone on and seen 6 different versions of couplers. Either they're 5s, KD 5s, or they're Intermountain, or you name
Accumate,
it.
or
whatever.
Whatever Atlas is using.
And they're all the box gloves, the connectors are all different. If you're going to use 148s, use 148s on everything. Don't use 5s, because 148s and 5, and don't couple up well.
Right.
You know what I mean? They are, because it's like half the size of a 5, and then they're tough to uncouple too. They don't uncouple. So I have a section of track, 2 foot long, and I've bought 2 of those KD couple of height tools. I have one at each end, and I put my car in it, and I change the couplers, and then I run the car down on each end to make sure that the height tool in the car is the same height. If you got one that's off, I have those KD washers, and I just add those washers underneath the trucks to make sure everything is right. I try to get them as close as I can. Sometimes with the washers, you can get them right on the money. Sometimes it might be slightly a little higher than you want it to be, but if your track is level and it ain't going up and down, the couplers will stay together, especially if you're going up a helix or going up a hill. You want the couplers when they're riding. I mean, even on a prototype, if you really watched and you listened, you can hear that big banging noise you hear when a car goes by. That's just the coupler reposition itself in the coupler in front of it. It's just the force, because their rail ain't perfect. If you really zoomed in on a prototype track, you would see that it is up and down and up and down and up and down. But when you're looking at it with your eye, it looks like it's superb, perfect, But that big noise you hear when a car goes by, that's the coupler readjusting itself because of the different grades in the track. But there's a tolerance for that. If it's too much and you're using a small coupler to a big coupler, then it's just going to fall apart. It's going to come out, and then you'll put it together, and then you'll back up the same hill or whatever, and it'll fall apart again. So pick a coupler. The common coupler is the KD number 5. That's what most model railroaders use. I change mine because they look horrible in photos. Because the coupler just looks way too big for the car. You know, if you go look at a real prototype car and you look at the coupler, you notice that it's not this big monster sitting at the end of the car. It's small. And just make sure you use your alignment and line everything all up, you know, and you'll have good success, because the worst thing to do is be pulling the train up a helix or up a hill, and then all of a sudden pops apart and there goes the back of your train right down to where it started, you know. To me, that's an important part of cars. Steel wheels, another part of cars. Get rid of the plastic, put the steel on. Great for keeping track cleaner. Plastic wheels are porous. Any dust, the stuff that accumulates on your track is going to all build up on your cars. If you have plastic wheels and you pick a car up and you look at it, you're going to see this black crud all surrounding all the way around on the wheels. And what that does, it builds up and it raises the truck off the track. And then eventually, if it gets hung up on something, it's just going to derail. The other thing, too, is cars that have the coupler boxes mounted on the trucks, like, you know, the older stuff, you know.
Right.
You want the cars pulling on the body of the car, not on because that leaves the wheels free to flow. The other important thing I do is I loosen up the screws holding the trucks on, where if you look at it and flop around, it'll be ready to fall off. Well, if you pick up a real rail car, the wheels will fall off. There's no Phillips head screw on the bottom of a bolster screwing this thing on. It just falls off.
Right.
So that's nice. If you have some track that's not really perfect, the wheels are able to maneuver all those little
it gives
obstacles.
us some suspension,
right? Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. You know, because not all cars pull the same.
Right.
You know what I mean? The longer cars pull different than the shorter cars. So it just helps. And usually, and I've had it happen, if I had a car on there, especially a new car, I usually loosen them all up pretty good. I don't loosen them up to the point where if you pick it up, it's only held on by a thread.
Yeah.
I'll leave 2 or 3 threads, but not. Right. And I've had some fall right off. I've found screws in the track that I don't know where they belong. You know, and the only time you find it is if the car derails and the wheel and the truck pops off. Oh, that's where you blow. So, you know, so I just put it on the engine house, so I know where the screws are.
Right.
You know, and then I put them on. But the other thing I started using too is that crystal clear glue, that crystal clear stuff. Mm-hmm. If you put a little bit of crystal clear on the screw and then you put the screw in there, crystal clear will act like a glue. It won't be a glue, but it's just enough to keep the screw from turning out on its own. Because if they're loose enough, just with the mechanical of the truck going back and forth, eventually the screw will work its way out and fall out.
Yeah, actually, it's like a kind of a thread locker of sorts.
Right, exactly. But it's not a thread lock, because that stuff you need a jackhammer to get it off with.
Yeah.
But the crystal clear is perfect for stuff like that. Like I used that on my I was using it on some of my ditch light stuff too. You put it on there, and then you put the ditch lights in the casting, and then then it gives you time to line it all up so you get the most light intensity out of the ditch light. Then I just put a clothesline clip on it and just set it on the bench and let it dry.
Nice.
If you have a problem and the dish light burns out, you just pop it out, pop a new one in there. You know?
Awesome.
So that stuff's great stuff.
So preparing rolling stock, it sounds like a tedious, but yet such a necessary project to make sure and go through. And I know for myself, a little bit of discipline. When I get a new car, it doesn't touch my layout until all that process has been done, because otherwise you shortcut it. And next thing you know, that's the car that's sticking out with problems.
Yep, absolutely. I don't put any cars on the layout until it goes through all that. New couplers, testing and checking the heights. The other thing I've had to do on some of my cars is the hose, the trip pin too. You got to adjust those, because some of them, even out of factory, they're hanging down low, and it'll hit the frog on the turnout and just lock that train right up solid. You know what I mean? Or derail something. So I have the tool. I bend them all up. So some people cut them off. I thought about cutting them off, but when you're doing a video and you see in between the cars, and I've had people comment on some of my videos where how nice and level my couplers were, you know. But to me, what stands out more than that is the hoses, because in the prototype, you got a connection of air. If you cut those off and you do a video, it looks like something's missing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and I like to do videos, so to me, I leave the trip pins on there just so it simulates the air hoses are hooked up. And I try to trim them all up where they're almost perfect with each other. I know there's different things out there. They had these little magnetic, I don't know if you've ever seen those, I forgot what the name of them are. You shut the trip pins off, you put these little hoses and you glue them on each car. And then as the car comes together, couples up, there's little magnets in the end of these hoses and they just snap right together.
Yeah.
And then when you disconnect it, they'll pop apart, Yeah. But to me, it's not.
When you have 100 cars on your layout and then you multiply that by 2 and there's a lot to be done there for sure.
I mean, my first layout had like over 550, 600 cars on it. So the cars all worked good, but nothing was weathered. And to me to do all that, forget it. And I was running all number 5s on the first layout. But this layout, the car management system's a little easier. So now everything's weathered. Everything, change the couplers. And I spend a lot of time on the cars to make sure they run right. Another thing I found with rolling stock too is sometimes you can't never make one of them happy. You'll have a car that will go in one direction and be perfectly fine, but somehow if that car got turned around the other way and it went through, it would derail every time in the same switch. But if you pick it up and turn it around and put it back down, it's fine. Why that happens? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, but it's happened to me. It's happened on this layout too.
Right.
People say, the car keeps derailing. Pick it up and turn it around. Put it on. Never hear another word about it.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. It happens.
They're supposed to be bi-directional, but
they are, but I don't know what it is. It's just something, I mean, I check the wheels with the gauge to make sure everything's gauged. Because sometimes you look down at the truck and you look at an eye view and you look up, you'll see that the front wheels offset of the wheel behind it. You know what I mean? So you just got to take them out and just got to twist them and line them up and tighten them back up and get them back where they got to be. You can still gauge them, but you're making the wheels more alignment than, because I took all that. I mean, most all new cars today come with steel wheels anyway. It's real hard to find a car. Unless you buy a train set, you might get plastic wheels, but I think the days with these cars we're buying today, they all steel wheels now.
Right. And you mentioned one thing about couplers and something to keep in mind. And Don has gone over to scale heads, as he's mentioned.
Yep.
Just remember that the margin of error in a scale head is far more than a standard head. And it's just even more that you really need to focus in on and make sure you have adjusted correctly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you got half the space to work with. If you pull the 5 off and you put a scale head on, you got half the couple box to work with. The other thing too, I've seen guys, they're running cars with regular couples and shelf couplers. They're a pain to uncouple in an op session. They're not, actually, I think shelf couplers are a pain to uncouple with a tool anyway, because they're just too big. They're too high, and I just never had that good luck with them. Some people might. I'm not saying not to use them. I'm just saying that I don't prefer them. I'm not the boss of people. They can do whatever they want to do, whatever they're happy with.
No, but if you're looking for something that, operators are going to be able to easily uncouple, and easily uncouple leads to less derailments, because now they're not forcing the uncouples. They're not picking the cars up because they're getting frustrated because they can't get the coupler to undo. So I think it's actually a very valid point to what we're talking about here, which is that getting towards bulletproof ops.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because I don't only do this for me. I do this for my operators. I don't want guys coming over and operating and saying, "Oh, this thing's not working. This is derailing over here." Blah 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 blah. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear, "Oh, wow, that thing ran good tonight. Whatever you did, it's good." I don't want any complaints. Like you ran that PR3 job. And there wasn't one problem with it. It never usually is. Actually, none of the work. The only thing I did have is I kind of started using the spring switches. When we get back to the track work, the Caboose Hobbies hand throws. Mm-hmm. They work well. They're really nice. They hold the switch points tight and everything. But again, if you like to photograph your layout and you catch one of them in a photo, it just like ruins the whole thing for me. I've tried the N scale ones, but they just don't have enough throw for HO.
Yeah. So
we went with a spring. You bend a piece of piano wire. I think it's 130.32. Then you bend it and you drill a hole in the tie outside the switch. Well, not outside, but where the hole is, where your switch machine wire would go in, just behind the next tie, and you'd bend it and then you'd pop it in there. And you got to keep it a little tight. Then as you threw your switch back and forth, it would kind of snap a little bit and hold it one way and the other. I started using those, especially in a paper mill. And then eventually I've noticed as we operate that the metal starts biting into the plastic ties, and then they don't start working right at all. They're terrible. So I said, well, they's got to go. So I just got done changing everything over to tortoise machines, everything. And I changed the switches. I got rid of the push-pull things, the old style. I tried to do a little old school stuff, but I just went back to the switch machines.
Sounds like a delicate balance in overall between solid ops and great scenery, right? Like trying to get them both to balance out right.
Yep, exactly. You spend a lot of time, a lot of effort to try to make a realistic scene. And then you plop in a Caboose Hobbies HO scale switch stand, and it just ruins everything. Ruins everything, and that's how I noticed it, because I take pictures. Even when I operate, I take pictures. I'm like, wow, this is going to be a nice shot. Like, I don't know if people have seen that picture that I took of my 4006 coming up through Valley Falls in the switch between the switch cabinet and the signal. I was like, wow. As soon as I seen it coming around the corner, I'm like, wow, this is going to make a nice photo. Got the phone out, snap that baby right off,
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find nothing in that photo that was wrong. You know what I mean? I zoomed right in on it so I didn't have any fuzziness around the whole thing at all. And I'm not a photographer, and I won't claim to be. But I think I finally learned how to use my iPhone to take pictures with.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
And you're a master of selfies too, so don't credit you. You do definitely nail the selfie down. But speaking of 4006 and locomotives, let's talk about locomotives, some maintenance and some prep that you do to make sure that the power is doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Right. So, I mean, when my locomotives has gone through several transitions of sound decoders. QSI was the only thing out there. That's what I had. And then once soundtracks came out, it sounds better, because to me, every QSI locomotive has a built-in flying saucer in there somewhere, because it always sounds like a little flying saucer swooshing around in there. And I'm like, and I didn't realize this until soundtracks come out with their decoders. And then I started transferring over to theirs. Then eventually I went to ESU. I picked the ESU because I can program that decoder sound. If you got if you got a bunch of, like, I got like half a dozen GP38s because the PNW had 6 of them. And then if you put them together in a consist with the same exact sound file and the same speeds and everything, you get this whooshing noise between the two of them. It just like kind of floats from one, and the sound kind of floats across the car body into the other one. It's this little back and forth, little whooshy little sound you get out of it. But with ESU, they got different files for the GP38 645 non-turbos.
Yep.
So you try to, if you're going to consist a couple locomotives together, pick 2 different files, and that eliminates all that noise. You know what I mean? But the sound is one thing. I use scale sound speakers. It brings out the lower and the higher pitch tone, the lower tones in the GEs and the higher tones in the EMDs. But they don't make the engine run any better. What makes an engine run good is a capacitor. I swear by it. I mean, people are going to say, well, if your track is clean, you don't have to worry about that. And I agree with that. If your track is clean, you shouldn't have to worry about that. But the capacitor just enhances that locomotive and that decoder to run twice as good as it normally does, because it never loses power. If you did have a problem somewhere, it would go. I mean, I probably clean my track probably every 3rd session.
Mm-hmm.
I probably could clean it every time. Now that I have the Iowa scale modem in, it's a piece of cake, because I got to point to point. And I can be doing other things. And I just put my cleaning train on there, and it'll just go back and forth all by itself. I don't have to mess with it. You know what I mean? And, but sometimes you forget, you miss a spot, and there's some dirt there, or you start getting, and you will get the gum up on the locomotive wheels too. So you got to clean those. So now before every session, I run the track cleaner train around. I have the one that Scott Thornton had when he first come out, I think Matt, I don't know who's got that.
ISE is
yeah,
now,
they
has
got
that now. Yep.
And I use that to clean the sidings. I pull the cars out and I clean everything. Even though the locomotives never go into where the cars are really sitting, I still clean the track because you're still pushing cars in there and your wheels are still going to pick up all that junk and it's going to drag it out and it's going to just deposit it on the main line too. So I clean all the track every session now. I have that same board I have that I do the couplers on, the rolling stock. I hook that up. I got a 2-wire drop off my bus and my layout near my workbench with Anderson power pole connectors, and I plug this into that. So I can just use my regular throttle, and I put a handy wipe on there with some alcohol, and I clean every locomotive on the layout, all of them. They all get cleaned before every op session. So between the clean wheels, and you'll be surprised how much that gunk comes off those locomotives, even if you clean it on a weekly basis, you know. So cleaning is the utmost important. Cleaning your wheels, but I can't speak highly enough about the capacitor. The capacitor, just that added little effort to help that locomotive get across a dirty spot during an op session, say. You know what I mean? Because where you were working, there's switches all over the place over there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you can actually set that locomotive in speed step 1. And that locomotives, both of them, they'll just crawl right through there at 1 mile an hour, and they won't even blink an eye.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can pick a locomotive up and carry it over to the workbench and set it on the workbench and it's still moving. The bad thing about the capacitor is that if you have a siding with spirit that don't have a Haynes bumper or something in the end to stop the locomotive, if you're operating and you're and somebody shorts out or something and something goes down, that engine's it'll drive right off the end of the track.
Yeah, for
you know
sure.
what I mean? So you kind of got to watch that. But so cleaning the wheels on the engines, installing capacitors in the locomotives, it's not hard to do. It depends on whose Dakota you're using. The soundtracks the new ones have a plug. They can just plug it in. The ESU ones, they have 2 pads where you can solder their power pack. Or I use the TCS ones myself because they're really small. I like the ESU ones too, but they're kind of big, you know, and there's not a lot of room. By the time you put speakers in and all this stuff in there, you're kind of limited on space. So TCS has different sizes and configurations that something will work. So I use those. I have put in reed switches in the car body up near, especially up around the hoods, because when you want to program a Dakota with that kind of a capacitor in there, you got to put a magnet there to open up the reed switch, because if not, the programmer won't read the Dakota. Some people have told me that they don't have a problem with that. I've always had a problem with it.
I've had problems with it. Yeah.
I don't know how they're not having problems with it, but the only ones I don't have problems with is the new board with the capacitors built right on it.
Right.
With the 6 little capacitors built on it already. I've changed
the ESU V5 Direct.
Yes, I pretty much changed all mine over to that Dakota now. I still have some with the reed switch, but I keep a track of which ones they are, so I know where I need to use the magnet. And I always put the magnet somewhere where, like, the GEs are right in the back radiator on the engineer's side. The EMDs are right underneath the dynamic brake hood on the engineer's side. You know, so I know where they are all the time. It's not like I got to guess. But I also have a list of which locomotives have the new Dakotas, where I don't have to worry about it at all. And even with them, I've had trouble programming them. So lately what I've been doing is I got a toggle switch on my programming box. So I put the engine on there. I shut the switch off. I let that capacitor drain right out, and I stay off for about 20, 25 seconds. Then I get the programming up already where I want. And just before I hit program, I flip the switch on, hit that, and it works every time. I don't have any more problems with that, you know. But like I said, good Dakotas, capacitors, clean wheels, clean track. As far as locomotives go, that, and the only other thing is speed matching. If you're going to consist locomotives together, you got to speed match locomotives so they run good. And I don't mean when you're speed matching, you can watch the 2 locomotive couplers bounce on each other. That's not really speed matched. because with the back EMF in these locomotives, that's what's causing all that bumping around. So what I do is I get one locomotive where I want it. I program my locomotives. The top speed's 15 miles an hour on my layout because it's a regional. Mm-hmm. We're not towing, through freights and none of that stuff.
Yeah, you're not the Northeast Corridor.
Not the Northeast Corridor. There's no reason to go fast.
Right.
So top speed. So the low speed end is 1. The top speed is at 15 miles an hour. And I like that. And sometimes I look at trains go by at 15 miles an hour. They're still only they're going by too fast.
Yeah, speed doesn't translate in scale, does it?
It doesn't at all because I'll look at that in a yard and I'm like, oh, this thing is, maybe I should speed this one up a little bit. Then I watch a couple of engines going up to Valley Falls and he's going by the signal. I'm like, it's going too fast. I got to slow that thing down. But yet, if you put them in the speed, I got the speedometer. If I run them all through the speedometer and they're all 15 miles an hour, full speed, dead.
Yeah.
So getting back to the Constantine, I don't like that bouncing back and forth thing, So I'll get one at the speed I want, and then the one behind it, I'll just tweak that speed just a little bit higher, just enough so it's pulling, so one's pulling on the other one a little bit, and that keeps the couplers nice and taut and tight. So, like, again, when you're videoing, you don't want to see the front engine start to move and then the rear engine run right into the back of it. Or the wheels turning nice on one and the one in the back of spinning 100 miles an hour trying to push the one in the front of it. Yeah. So that's another thing when you're operating is having good constant speed match locomotives for nice train control. Especially if we're using the proto throttles now, we're trying to simulate a prototype. You're actually running a prototype with this throttle. So you don't want it jumping all over the place. You want to give it a notch and you want it to come up nice and slow and move, and then notch it up a little more, get it going a little faster, not run the thing all the way up to notch 8. Yeah. And let it take off on you. You know what I mean? So. Yeah, they're locomotives. They're not sports cars. No, they're not. Yeah, exactly. They're not. And they don't stop on a dime, and they're not jackrabbit starters either. No. So, but. Exactly. And that's what you want to see because that really gives you that sense of realism when you start to see that and how they operate together. Yeah. Now, I want to get, before we move on, you talked about locomotive cleaning. And when I was down in Florida, you surprised me a little bit because I thought when we were cleaning locomotives, I was using paper towels, but that's not what you're using anymore. Tell us a little bit about that. I'm going to use my age now, but handy wipes. Yeah. You buy them anywhere in the store. They get a big pack from the pack is like a pack of napkins, and I bought one pack probably 15 years ago, and I still have it, because you're just cutting little sections of it out and putting it on the rail, soaking it with alcohol, and just doing the front truck and then do the back truck. And I like the paper. The trouble with the paper towel is that the wheels will, when you clean it, it'll wear right through the paper towel in a split second. It has no body. Right. Where the handy wipes are more of a clothy material, and I don't think I've ever ran the wheels through any of them. Sometimes, depending on how dirty the wheels are, I'll reuse them instead of getting a new one. And then when you're running it and you make it big enough, like I usually cut them out like probably 3 inches by 3 inches, a little square. So you clean the wheel. And then when you turn the locomotive around, you just shuffle the pad over a little bit so that back wheels ain't on the same spot, because the only thing you're doing is putting all the black stuff back on. Yeah, you don't want to pick up what you just dropped down. Yeah. So when you want to clean them till there's no marks on there at all. Right. And that's what your goal is when you clean the wheels, there's nothing there. That's when they're clean. And then I've had people say, well, my locomotive don't run good. They bring it over. I'm like, well, what do you think's wrong with it? He goes, I don't know. He says, it doesn't run good. It stops, it goes, it stops, it goes. I said, well, do you clean the wheels? No. Why not? Especially if you're in a club environment, because there's no volunteers to clean track and clubs. Right. You know what I mean? So tracks don't really get, and then most clubs like to use the wall clipper oil. Yeah. To me, that's like, forget it. I'll never use that stuff. Yeah. That's like asking for trouble. Yeah. And in track cleaning, that's an entire debate that could take up probably 4 podcasts. There are so many schools of thought on cleaning track, but for sure to be able to keep up and make sure that the locomotives are clean, that they're speed matched, that they're running properly. Anything for maintenance as far as locomotives go? Stay away from the oil. They don't need it. I mean, it's a locomotive. on your model railroad, it's if you're running a class 1, you're probably going to set your locomotives at around 40, 45 miles an hour, maybe 50. But then you're probably going to cut that way back because it's going to look like it's going way too fast. You know what I mean?
Lionel, yeah.
So your motor and your gearing are not really turning that fast. You know, it's not like if you were doing 200 miles an hour, you'd need to lubricate the gears. Mm-hmm. But when you're doing 15 miles an hour, you're not heating nothing up. There's nothing really need to be lubricated. And I don't lubricate nothing. The oil stays in the oil bottle. I don't put any oil in my locomotive trucks. If I had to, I would more lean towards a white lithium grease because the grease doesn't break down. Trouble with oil is that oil will eventually leak its way down into the cover of the gearbox, and eventually, if you overdo it, and I from doing Dakota installations, I'll tell you what, I've opened up a few, and I mean they're just the oil's just boxes full of oil. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Oh, no. You know, the truck is just flooded with oil. It's like, I tell the people, stop with the oil. You don't need to lubricate. You know, the instructions say one little drop in the hole. Yeah. Little drop, not pump it right in there till it's kind of like a grease gun.
Not a pint.
Yeah, right. Just put it, if you insist on oil, just put one drop in the hole. The newer locomotives don't even have holes for oil anymore. Those are the old ones because nobody uses it. You know, there's no need for it. You know, there's no heat there to worry about the gears.
And always follow the manufacturer's recommended maintenance requirements for sure. So let's talk about the operating sessions themselves and the prep that goes into that, because, boy, I think that's, you know, again, all these foundational things about making sure your operating session goes well. Talk about the prep and the things that go into making sure that it's very clear what an operator should be doing.
As far as getting ready for an op session, I usually start getting ready probably 2 or 3 days ahead of time because I'm doing installs and stuff. I might be doing some scenery. So I try to give myself 2 or 3 days for cleaning up, vacuuming, cleaning the track. Yeah, again, track cleaning is a part of prepping. Locomotive cleaning is a part of prepping. The other stuff is I have a vacuum car that goes around that with the 2 Tony Trains Exchange tank car cleaners.
The CMRs.
The CMRs, yes. Yep. And I use that because you do get ballast breakaway and stuff like that. And lint, just general dust in the room, you know. You got to, you know, that stuff falls on the rail. And then if sometimes you ever pick up your locomotive and you look at the wheels and you see like cotton balls around the axles, well, that's what that's from. It's from lint. Yeah. It's just general dust in the room, you know. And you got to get a tweezer in there or take the truck apart, clean all that lint off because that lint is just getting into the contacts of the wheels. And, you know, our locomotives depend on the rail, clean wheels, the contacts, the side frame clips that rub on the wheels to carry the power to the wires up to the Dakota. It's just not a wheel clean. You got to, you know, if you're having problems and you clean your wheels, then you got to look beyond that. You got to say, well, what else is there? Well, take the side frames off. Look at your brass, your little brass things on the wheels. Are they black inside where the axles go in? You know, if they are, then you got to I use a toothpick and some alcohol, and I just run a toothpick in there like a little drill bit, and because it doesn't open the hole up anymore, but it cleans all that crap out of there. So yeah, so keeping your locomotives clean, then making sure everything's staged if you need to stage. I really don't do any staging. My railroad's pretty much self-staging. The only thing I do have to do is in the CSX yard, the interchange trains, everything ends up, whatever come out during the session ends up back in the CSX yard and then gets rotated and then comes out on the next session. But they go in blocked from how they came into the yard. So what happens to keep sort of, once the yard mass has something to do, I mix up all the cars in the CSX yards. And then we just bring the cars over 3 cuts at a time. It's 3 tracks. We bring a cut over, drop it off in Worcester. Then he'll take a cut of cars back, set them in the yard. They'll be all blocked up anyway. But that's, like I said, at the end, I'll scramble everything up. This way here, when you bring the cars into Worcester, the yardmaster physically has to make up these trains. So he's going to make up the interchange train, the interchange train to the paper mill, the NES sugar plant job, and then, like I said, the interchange going up to Valley Falls for PR2 and PR3. So that's all going to be made up by the yardmaster before they go out. And then the other thing too is your switch lists. Mm-hmm. That's an important part because you need an operator to come in and understand what his job entails. You got to be very decisive and clear. And what I've done, especially, I just swapped over to switch lists from car cards. I did car cards for years. Car cards are pretty self-explanatory. The problem I have with car cards is that I get them in the mail after
souvenirs.
Yeah, I'm like, never fails. Here comes an envelope full of car cards because somebody had them in their pocket and took them home.
I think it's a thank you note for inviting you, but instead it's just the car cards coming back.
Even though there's a big sign on the door that says check your pockets before you leave, they still slip through. So I said, and I got sick and tired of I like a clean fascia on my layout. I don't like all these car card boxes. That's just not what I like. So I decided to go to switch lists. It's a little more work on my part, but I think they're better. I mean, there's hooks where they can hang them, so you don't have to carry it around with you. And they've evolved. Like Joe Mammy originally did these switch lists for the railroad he was building. So I looked at them. I was like, wow, these things will work good because I didn't have any yet. So I was just looking. I was going to make them, but then I was talking to Joe one night. He said, I made these. He said, I'll send you a copy of this one here. So he sent me over. And basically all I did was take his logos off, put my logos on, and it's changed a little bit because some guys couldn't really still understand it, especially the pickup part of it. We had pickups to make. So, then again, at the end of the session, these little critiques come in like, okay, what about the switch list? Is there something that you think it might make it better? Something I could change? So I guess that I used to highlight the outbounds in yellow, inserted in a block on the Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
But I didn't like it the way it looked. You know what I mean? To me, the aesthetics part of it looked like, you know what I mean?
It was like cheat sheet kind of
right.
thing, right?
I mean, today most railroads still use dot matrix printers. You know what I mean? So mine don't look like dot matrix, but I didn't like the color.
Yeah.
So, but I had to do something. So what we decided to do is all the text for the outbounds were a different color than the inbound stuff. So the inbound stuff is all black. If it's on the train, it's in bold black. If it's a respot, then it's in just regular, not a black, no bold. So the bold one means that the car that you're going to put in there is on the train, and the other one is already in the industry, and you're just going to respot it after you pull whatever car you're pulling out. That's going to be the next one in. So we did the outbounds in a red, in a not bright red, but just kind of a red. So it looks like it's different than the black, and it worked out great. They understand now which cars they're pulling out, what cars they're putting in, and I've changed stuff. Well, I'm always changing stuff. I can never leave well enough alone. But on the switch list, I actually, being up here for the last month and a half, I took my laptop with me, and because my switch lists, I've changed them so much, they didn't all look identically the way it's supposed to look. So I took this opportunity to go through all my switch lists and make them all uniform. Now the only thing different on them is the cars that are in them and the jobs and the job description and all that stuff in there. But they all pretty much match each other now. So because I noticed that this is like this on this one, but it ain't like this on this one. So we could fix that. So that's done. So the good thing about this downtime that I had up here is that I was able to fix all that stuff. The other thing for operating sessions, for new people, I don't have a lot of room to do the buddy system in my layout, which because I don't have, it's done right. It's plenty of aisle space, but I can't have 2-man crews on jobs. So I'm not really one for 2-man operations anyway. I want to do everything myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to be the conductor and the engineer.
I hear you.
So I don't do that. And most of my operators, they just want to do the whole thing. They don't want anybody working with them, when you get new guys, you kind of got to put them somewhere where you can keep an eye on them. You know what I mean? So my paper mill's perfect for a new guy because he's got an in-house switcher. There's your throttle. You got your own in-house switch list right there. All you got to do this part of the switch list tells you where the cars are right now before you touch anything.
Right.
Flip the switch list over, and this is what you have to make this look like when you're done. So you just look at the car number and just put the car number in the spot that it's supposed to go in. It's not, it's not rocket science. Some guys will pick it right up like this. Some guys will be there for the whole op session 3 hours and box themselves into a corner like you've never seen.
Yeah.
But it's expected because they don't really, some guys will pick it up like this. I got one guy that's he's so efficient with his track moves. He's the one I decided to put on the jobs when I was doing the time-lapse videoing because it would be almost like perfect. You know what I mean? When he did it.
Right.
It's like you just look at it and just watch the way when he does the paper mill. If you look at the time-lapse video and see how he does it, I never realized until I watched the time-lapse video how good he is at moving cars around in a layout, and switching. Very, very, very good at it. But then if I have like a guy doing PR2, which is like on the other side, on the upper level. So you go over there, this is what you're going to do. It's an engine and 4 cars. It's not difficult. Well, it is difficult, but it's not difficult. If you have any questions, the guys like you were there. If you were there and you were one of my regular operators and you've done all the layouts, you could help him. You know what I mean? Do what he's got to do. So, I mean, I always try to put a new guy where one of my seasoned guys are going to be with him to help him navigate through the job, instead of keep coming and getting me because I like to operate and I don't want to have to be pulled off my job. We had this conversation with John Parker during his ops thing. And I like to do my work. I don't like to get interrupted when I'm doing my job. You know what I mean? I built this layout for me and everybody wants to operate on it. So I want to have fun just like everyone else. I don't want to build this and not have the fun. If I was doing a special ops session for a bunch of guys, then I would not operate.
Right.
I would be there and I'd probably have maybe one other guy come over to help pilot around. That's what we did on the old layout. I mean, we had 15 guys. I didn't take 15 guys for an op session there. I would take like 10. Then I would bring in 5 of our own guys and have them, because it's a big layout. I mean, it's like in 4 different rooms, so it's like, I can't be everywhere, because everybody wants to talk to the owner, not just talk to anybody.
Right.
It's like when you go to a train show and you got 6 people working with the guy that owns the company, and the line is for the guy that owns the company, not the 6 people trying to help him.
That's right.
That's what it's like. But, so new guys usually, they'll pick it up pretty good. I mean, I'm in Florida. There's not a lot of new guys, but every now and then you'll get one, and you got to do that. But like most of the time I do the yard. So the guy doing the paper mill is right there. So if you got any problem, just call me, turn around, boom, yep, and you're all done. You know what I mean? And it works out good. But once you get a crew that knows the whole layout, then it's like, unless the dispatch is calling somebody, it's like total silence in there. You don't hear anything from anybody. Or you just hear a bunch of engines running. Yeah. And that's another thing. Talk about engines running. The volume. You're ever working in Worcester, you don't need to be hearing the guy on PR3's engines blowing horn and ringing bells.
Right.
The bells pretty much, they're not silent, but they're on enough where you can hear it, but nobody else is going to hear it.
Yeah.
The air horns are slightly louder than that, only because in the prototype, the air horns are loud, but not loud enough where I can hear it, but not a deadly sound,
Well, yeah, you want to emulate that feeling of distance, and that definitely helps with the sound. And I don't want to go past the whole concept of how you essentially nurture new operators on your layout, or even new operators in general. It's so important not to set them up for failure, because it can be intimidating for somebody new. I remember the first time I operated, and I was very intimidated, making sure I didn't, 1, break anything, and 2, doing it at least somewhat right, so I'm not messing everybody else up. And so that's a very intimidating position to be in. And when you're a layout owner, as much nurturing as you can provide to let them know, keeping the right mentality. in the end, we're playing trains, and let's make sure that we don't get too crazy on them, so that make sure that they come back.
Yeah. So let's use you as an example.
Sure.
You flew from Connecticut to Florida, operated that night, and went back home the next day.
Yeah.
All right. Who does that? You know what I mean?
Well, I might be a little crazy, but it's that much fun.
Right. But were you comfortable during the whole op session? Did you feel like you were intimidated, or you couldn't understand what you were doing? Did your switch list explain to you pretty much? You must have, because you didn't ask me a question all night, and you did a perfect job.
Yeah, and I think being a little bit of a fairly experienced operator definitely helped with that. But also your responsibility as somebody going to a layout, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk, right? And I listened to you when you walked over and you explained the job and said, "Here, I'm going to give you a couple helpful hints. Make sure you do." And I followed those instructions. Now, the second time I go down, and if I get PR3, I'm going to do it the same way you told me. Third, fourth, fifth time, I might go, "Oh, I got an idea," but not until a bunch of times. Not the next time I go there am I going to try to dictate or change the way that job is done. I'm going to follow it and learn it and learn it and learn it. Just like anything else, you don't try to reinvent it on the second or third attempt. Just do it the way and listen and follow the instructions. Read the paper, right?
Read the paper. I don't tell people how to do things. I'll suggest stuff, but and ultimately, this is your job. You do it. No two crews do everything the same way.
Right.
Me and you will switch a train job one way, and then 2 other guys will come in tomorrow and do that same job totally different. That's the way it is. We're aiming for prototype operations. That's what we're aiming for. And the other prototype is the end of train devices we use from MacRail. I actually get upset when people don't use them. I mean, I've had guys come back to the yard without the end of the EOT. I'm like, "Where's your EOT?" "Oh, it's over there." But it's supposed to be in the rear couple of the car.
Yeah.
Use it. That's why I got them. It slows the operation down. Derails. How many times I go out after the session's over and the derails are still open?
Yeah.
Close the derail. This stuff it's a small layout. You're trying to get at least 3-hour operation out of it. Yeah. My goal is 3 hours. That's the goal. Sometimes, like I said in the question in a month, that you might go over 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. Half an hour is really all I'll really go over. Because down my way, guys got our ride home. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? These guys are not just coming down. Only one guy comes from 2 streets over.
Right.
Everybody else.
He's a young guy. He can stay up all night anyway. Yeah.
Everybody else has got a 45-minute ride north, 45-minute ride south. And I got one other guy. It's like probably 15 minutes away. He's got a few more streets to go over than John does. But, it just, you got to make it comfortable for everybody. Understand it. PR3, the job you were on, what did you do first?
Whatever you told me to, which I think was, you said I had a gondola on the pin.
Right.
So I ran the gondola down. I switched out sims.
Right.
And then I came back, and then you said shove the 3 tanks or whatever, how many tanks, 2 tanks into Motiva.
And then come back later.
So then I went down, I completed the Univar job. And then I came back, and then I did Motiva and ended, and there was no problems because I read the paper, but it wasn't a paper. You told me this, but I listened, and and I think that's really the key. And talking about listening, not only is listening, crucial if you're going to be an operator and have success as a layout owner, listening at the end also helps. And that kind of leads into that end of session and that feedback you get from your operators and being able to listen and take their feedback as well.
Right. Well, the critiques are getting less and less because my operators have been there for a couple of years now, so there's not really much, unless the only critique now is if there's a problem somewhere. If you had a problem with a car, problem with locomotive, track problem, which is very rare, but I can't, if there's something that needs my attention, I can't fix it unless you tell me there was a problem. Right. Either write it down you got the switch list on the bottom where there's nothing there. If there's a car problem, just write the car number down. Tell me what, it's a coupler, it's something's not right with it. Mm-hmm. Just write it down. Because what I do is I take all the switch lists at the end of the session the next day.
Yep.
And I look for notes, and then I start going through the notes one at a time, bring the car over, the engine, or whatever the hell I got to do, and fix it. You know, because the only way you're going to stay on it. You know, what I don't want is I don't want these guys to come back the next week, and I got a whole nother guy doing that job, and he writes the same message down on the bottom of the switch list. You know, because if they don't, then the other guy's going to come back to that job again, and it's doing the same thing it was doing a month ago. Yeah. You know what I mean? Well, I don't want that. So I fix everything the next day. That's my goal. The next day I go out there and I repair anything that needs to be repaired. I mean, I got it down at, what is it? Geez, I can't remember. I haven't been in there so long. I'm starting to forget my own place. Denison, the oil company. I've noticed lately that when they're pushing cars into the switch, I put a number 4 switch in there because there wasn't a lot of room there. And I've done the job a couple times, and I've noticed it lately myself. I don't know, something changed that the cars are not pushing through the switch the way they're supposed to. And sometimes they'll derail, and it's a mess. So now when I go home, I got to get a number 6 turnout. And I think I'm probably going to take that 4 out and cut that switch, cut that in there, and hopefully I can get it in there. I might have to dig up the road a little bit to make this happen, but whatever. But I got to fix it. Right. Because I don't like the way it is right now. You know what I mean? And that's really the only issue that I have that I need to fix right now is that. And I would have fixed it already, but I left, so I couldn't really do nothing. But
which goes back to one of our schools of thought. Don't be afraid to change it. Don't be afraid to make a change. Don't be afraid to, and try new things and do those things that make your operations better. Boy, we've gone through quite a list here in the last hour plus, and we'll share a bunch of links. Don mentioned quite a few things and products that he recommends, and we'll make a whole list and share it on our website, aroundthelayout.com/156. So check all of that out there. We'll also share some pictures of Don's layout and some of the other items that he mentioned in the show as well. So Don, so great to have you here in the ATLP studio talking about how to make your operations more bulletproof. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, no problem, Ray. I enjoyed being up here in the local.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.